Hey everyone, welcome to Alexander James Guitars. This is the third episode of the Make It Monday series for the fretless guitar build. I've taken the neck out of the clamps and that fingerboard is all glued on now. Next step is to get this all sanded, get all these glue spots down, and make this perfectly level with the 12-inch radius. Remember that we put the silicone in the truss rod slot? Well, now, when you tap on the neck, you can hear that there's no truss rod rattle at all. And that truss rod's under no tension whatsoever. So that's one of the reasons that I put the silicone in the neck. I've straightened the truss rod and gotten the neck as straight as I possibly can at this stage. I'll have to adjust it a whole bunch while doing the sanding. I've just locked my radius sanding block in here and put 80 grit down on it. And I'm going to start taking these glue lines down and then down to the actual ebony. The key here is to not press down on the neck too much. You want to let the sandpaper do most of the cutting when doing this procedure because you don't want to put inconsistent curves or waves in the actual fingerboard by pressing down too much on one or the other hands. And it's always good to just flip the neck and then do it like this as well. So it's hitting in the middle a lot here, and not so much here. So now would be the time to adjust the truss rod to get the neck perfectly flat again. Every single time I take the neck off to check it, I'm just making sure that it's evenly sanding in all spots of the neck. If it's not, I'll adjust the truss rod. If it's scooped and I'm getting sanding scratches here and here, I know I need to adjust the dual way truss rod to combat that. Same with the middle. If I'm getting just scratch patterns in the middle, then I need to adjust the truss rod. This process takes a very long time, but this is what gives you a neck that plays extremely well. And I do this with every single custom guitar I build. I take a very long time in this process to make sure that when I'm finished, it comes out absolutely perfect. Here you can see I'm getting scratch pattern here, here, and then a little bit back here. I just need to start working with the truss rod to get this portion. And I'm just going to start going up in grits. This is 80 grit. Next I'll go up to 120 grit, and then 220, and then 320. So there it is. The fretboard has been completely leveled. It is super flat, sanded to 320 grit. The next step from here is to go ahead and start marking out where the fret inlays are going to be for the side of the fretboard. So we'll get started on that. To do the fret inlays on the side of the fingerboard here, I need to measure between each of the fret lines to figure out where the center is so that I can drill them for the inlay. So we know that there's one on 3, 5, 7, 9. Then there's going to actually be 2 on 12 like traditional guitars. So we'll have to measure that twice. Then we keep going up here. And I just mark it on the top of the tape here. This tape is to protect the fingerboard, but I mark it on the top here so I don't measure the wrong fret. It does happen. So just make sure that you have these at the right intervals. So the tools I use for this are the set of calipers. I'll use a calculator. And what I'm going to do is take the calipers and I'm going to measure on the third position. I'm going to measure between the two fret lines, between the second fret and then the third fret. This is a fretless, so we're just measuring the lines. And then I get roughly 1.256 of an inch, and then just half that. And then you have right here it says 0.628. So I'll just put the caliper to 0.628. Lock her down. And then I will line it up with the fret slot and then mark where that will be. Now right here I have some measurements already done. This is to save me time so I don't have to half the measurement every single time. I just set my caliper to these. This is for a 25-inch scale, and I just set my caliper to these and go along the edge of the fretboard and mark the center point. For my side dot inlays, I use 3/32 of an inch brass rod. I find it looks really nice on the side. So now that these are all marked, we'll go over to the drill press and drill the holes for the 3/32 brass rod. I have my 3/32 bit chucked in the drill here. I have the neck propped up so that the fingerboard is actually level with the table, so it goes straight in and it doesn't make the actual side dots go on an angle. So right now what I'm going to start to do is do a couple of the side dot holes, and then I'll bring you in for a closer look. There we go, all drilled. Now it's time to fit the 3/32 brass rod to these holes. So we'll go over to the other desk and work on that. So I take the brass rod and I just want to get the end ground down a little bit, just so that it'll go into the holes easier. Insert it into the hole and just kind of screw it in with your hand like this, just so that you know it's seated. Take some fret cutters. Mark where you want to cut, but don't cut it in the actual neck. Take it out and then cut it. And then just set that aside as your first side dot. And then start the whole process over. Oh, and if you're wondering why there's some poplar on this cherry neck blank, it's because the body's poplar, so I wanted to make more of a smooth transition for when this is glued into the poplar body. And I didn't film it, but all I basically did was just thin down the actual tenon of the cherry wood and just glued on a strip of poplar and sanded it to match, and that's it. To install the side dots, I'm just going to be using super glue, a chopstick to push the side dot in, and then obviously the brass material. Now that the side dots are completely glued in, I'm going to take them back down to the edge of the fingerboard here, just with this file. You want to be very careful as to not hit the edge of the fingerboard because it's pretty much close to finished width now, so just be mindful while you're doing this. Now that these are close to the edge of the fingerboard, I'll switch to a different file. So I've filed and sanded the side dots all the way down to the edge of the fingerboard, and these are pretty much done. The next step that we'll do on this neck is creating and gluing on a headstock veneer out of ebony, so stay tuned for that.